Welcome to the Stockboy Gaming channel, and today we're going open wheel racing. It's the BR8 versus DR1 versus BR8, and that might be confusing, but we're testing for everything that you see on the screen there. And these are all of my favorite setups for open wheel cars in GTA. So the idea here is that you'll be able to see how I set these up, get a couple of pointers, and find a setup that works well for you, all while seeing just how fast these cars are. First up, we're going drag racing. On the left is my low downforce BR8, and on the right is my ultra low downforce DR1. We're going to see which one gets to that 8th mile line first, and it's the BR8. The BR8 has really good acceleration, even though it has a little more downforce. You can see it's going to beat that DR1 to the quarter-mile line too. So the setups are on your screen in case you're wondering what I'm talking about. Those are the wing options you'll want, but watch the right. That DR1 starts to come back, and at the half-mile line, it actually beats the BR8. So it's part of the reason why I like the DR1. I'll explain more on that later. Now we've got my high downforce BR8 on the right, low downforce on the left, and maybe that high downforce is going to help this BR8 get to the 8th mile a little quicker, but it's not going to. The gap is so small though. So we can start to see how these heavy downforce options affect the acceleration of these cars. You can see the low downforce BR8 gets to that quarter-mile line quicker too, and it's going to keep that gap, or extend that gap I should say, all the way to the half mile. So how far off is that high downforce BR8? Well, the answer is not much, but the longer the straight is, the farther it's going to fall back. So it's kind of like a drag effect, which is kind of cool for an arcade game like GTA. Another thing to keep in mind as you're setting things up. And now we want to see what it does for the top speed, which isn't necessarily top speed, it's average speed around an entire lap at my Custom Speedway. Before you look at that half-mile time and go out and buy one of those DR1s, don't. Because if you can just get one, you're going to want a BR8. It's faster than all the other ones. At baseline, it's better than all the other ones. This is the car to have. Now, the DR1 I have in here because I like racing it on ovals. You'll see why here in a second, but a lot of people don't do that, and I'm kind of weird. So if you don't want to race on ovals, you don't have money to throw around, don't buy a DR1, buy a BR8. And what we're looking at here mainly is the high versus low downforce BR8. We know that DR1's the fastest, but the difference in speed isn't huge. It will make a difference though if you're racing on a place with long straightaways. So keep that in mind as we go in to my lap testing. And now we're gonna just take a look at the DR1 on the bottom compared to my low downforce BR8. And that DR1 at baseline is much slower, but now we've got really light aerodynamics on it too, so it's gonna have a tough time even coming close to the BR8 as you see here. The main thing that I'll tell you when you're doing these setups, and the way that I have everything set up except for my DR1, is it helps to have higher downforce on the front than you do on the rear. That's going to give you more grip in the front. It's going to make the car a little more maneuverable, I guess if you want to call it that. You can see there though at the bottom that DR1 can't even see the reverse start finish line when the BR8 goes through it. So we know that's going to be faster, but lower downforce in the back than you have in the front makes it a little more maneuverable. And one of the big keys in open wheel racing is keeping your car clean. It's going to help you get around people that are trying to hit you. So keep that in mind too as we do this, but this is the big matchup. Technical circuit, my low downforce setup versus my high downforce setup. Which one's going to be quicker? Both of them handle really well. The BR8's awesome. It has a longer wheelbase, so that trick about the higher downforce front wing is going to help you with them. But as we get to that first gantry, the higher downforce one has a bit of an advantage. But now we're going to go through this higher speed section, and if you watch the BR8 on the top, this is where it's going to have a bit of an advantage, and it closes the gap. So the higher downforce BR8 is a little faster still, but now we've got a hairpin we just went through and a long sweeping right-hander that's going to be an advantage to the high downforce BR8, so it'll extend its lead a little bit at that reverse start finish line on my test track. Now we're in the final section, which is going to favor the BR8 on top. So you kind of see where this is going. The BR8 on the top is going to maybe not close the gap there, but as we get onto this backstretch, it's going to start to move in, and is it going to pass it? Not quite. So the high downforce BR8 is the fastest at my test track, and it probably should be, but we're going to take a look at the gap here, and it's not by much, only about 1/10 of a second. I prefer my low downforce setup. It gives me a little extra speed on the straightaways. When you start adding in slipstream and everything like that, the handling's not that different. The BR8's going to be fast regardless. The DR1 with low downforce, you can see it's not a viable option to race. So like I said, unless you're on ovals, stay away from that DR1. We're gonna look at the speed score though, because it's my channel, that's what we do. You can see they're all above 100. 100 is a Hakuchi drag, which if you're not familiar with the speed score is the fastest vehicle in the game based on how I calculate everything. I don't normally use the speed score with open wheel racers, but I thought this was interesting. I wanted to show you guys exactly how fast they are, and the fact that the low downforce BR8 came out on top means based on my speed score, these low downforce setups, there might be something to it. So final tips for open wheel racing, the PR4 is not as fast as the BR8, and it's because it has higher downforce at baseline, and it can get up to stupid levels of downforce, but you don't want that because then you can't charge your curves because you're not ever slowing down enough. The Rockstar created tracks for open wheel racers aren't that great. Sometimes they can be a little bit confusing and it's hard to tell where you're going. So try first person mode. It tends to be a little bit easier with these open wheel cars once you get used to it. You're also going to need to get used to the tracks. Similar to tuner races with the shortcuts and stuff like that, you're going to have to practice to be good at these races, so don't get frustrated. It gives you a great opportunity to practice with a couple different setups. Try some of mine, see if you like them. They do work well for me, but like I said, you might need to tweak a little bit. When you're tweaking, make sure you keep higher downforce on the front than the rear to get that extra rotation in the BR8, and don't forget that racing in video games is to have fun. That gets lost in GTA a lot, which is unfortunate. People are going to try to take you out, you're going to lose some wings, it's going to be frustrating, but probably the best tip of all is that you can always find a new lobby if you need to. Thanks so much for joining in. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to subscribe and let me know what you think in the comments. Love to hear from you there. Thanks again, and I hope to see you next time.